This guy's a football junkie, and I'm looking forward to seeing him on the field this season.
Absolutely. And I'm a quarterback junkie. I love me some quarterbacks, man. I could talk about quarterbacks all day, with all due respect to all the other positions that matter in the National Football League. We are talking quarterbacks right now. I mean, clearly, we've been ranking all summer, since the NBA Finals concluded, quarterbacks top 32 heading into the year. And we are down to the finale, top 5 quarterbacks right now. And Zach, you're gonna go first, obviously. I believe I went first the last time. So if you want to kind of re-up on your list thus far while continuing that list going forward, the mic is yours.
Absolutely. So to recap what I've had so far on the list, have a lot of names, but let's get into it. I had Sam Howell at number 32, Jordan Love at number 31, Ryan Tannehill at number 30, CJ Stroud at number 29, Anthony Richardson at number 28, Baker Mayfield at 27, Desmond Ridder at 26, Kyler Murray at 25, Mac Jones at 24, Bryce Young at 23, Jimmy G at 22, Derek Carr at 21, Brock Purdy at 20, Deshaun Watson at 19, Kirk Cousins at 18, Matthew Stafford at 17, Russell Wilson at 16, Jared Goff at 15, my guy Kenny Pickett at 14, Justin Fields at 13, Tua Tagovailoa at 12, Daniel Jones at 11, Dak Prescott at 10, Geno Smith at 9, Trevor Lawerence at 8, Lamar Jackson at 7, and finally Josh Allen at number 6. Without further ado, let's get into my top 5. And at number 5, I'm going to get into a guy that, look, like, from a pure raw talent standpoint, there's no doubt this guy is an elite top 5 quarterback. I just want to see the results. And the reason why I have him in the top 5, despite that lack of results, is because I think the coaching around him, it just hasn't really been good. And that guy, of course, is Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. And my thing with Herbert is this, right? He was, for me, one of the more difficult guys to rank on the list because I understand the argument of how could you have Justin Herbert higher than Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, who's won an MVP, when both those guys have been to the playoffs multiple times. Herbert has only played one playoff game. We know how that ended, blowing a 27-0 lead to Jacksonville. And I will say, like, there are some aspects of Herbert's game that I want to see him improve on. Like the fact that the Chargers got shut out in the second half of that game was unacceptable. That can't happen if you're a top 5 quarterback. But for a guy who's only been in the league for a few years now, we know just how dynamic he is. I think the Chargers should hopefully stay healthier this upcoming year, unlike last year, which should give them a little bit of a jolt. We already spoke during the show about Kellen Moore and how big of an impact that should make. I do think that Herbert and his game has been limited a little bit based on Joe Lombardi's scheme and the fact that for some reason it looked like he didn't really trust him to make all the big throws down the field. Obviously, you got to love the addition of Quintez Johnston from TCU, a really dynamic wide receiver. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, they're both really good, but a lot of times they'll have trouble staying healthy. And for Herbert, it's a big year, with Kellen Moore, with Brandon Staley still there. This is a huge year for the Chargers. They're always one of the more talented teams in the AFC. Last year, injuries didn't really go right for them, but with Justin Herbert as your quarterback, you're of course going to have a chance to win a lot of games. And this team should be in the AFC divisional round at least, maybe even the AFC Championship game, based on the talent and the quarterback that they have. But anyone who listens to this show knows my issues with the Chargers are more towards their head coach opposed to their quarterback. So I will have Justin Herbert at number 5. It's obviously a big year for him. At number 4, I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets. And this is another guy, of course, that has come up already on the show when we were discussing some of the quarterbacks that have some pressure on him. And this is a guy that has a lot of pressure on him. It is such a huge year for Aaron Rodgers, but I do think this is something he needed in his career. It was a great run for him in Green Bay. They had a lot of success despite him only winning that one championship. But with all of the awful and heartbreaking playoff losses, I think it was time for both sides to move on. And I do think for Aaron, coming to a place like New York that, is just so hungry to win. We know that the New York Jets have the longest playoff drought in the league. Coming to a team with really good weapons around him, with Garrett Wilson, with hopefully a healthy Breece Hall. They bring in Allen Lazard. They bring in McCole Hardman. It's obviously such a huge year for the Jets. And my reasoning behind this ranking is I do think that there were some aspects of Aaron Rodgers' game that you could criticize last year. And I agree, right? Like, he was not great last year. And I do think that he should have made it a little bit more of a priority to come in to OTAs, to minicamp early, to develop that chemistry with his new receivers like a Christian Watson, like a Romeo Doubs. And it took some time, but when Green Bay got to about week 9, week 10 last year, that chemistry really started hitting. But unfortunately, it was a little too late, and Green Bay, they fell out of playoff contention. And when you look at that Packer team last year, I think the thumb injury, that didn't help the cause as well. But the last time we saw Aaron Rodgers come into a season motivated, where it was clear that the Green Bay Packers really didn't believe in him after they drafted Jordan Love, he not only won the MVP that year, but he won the MVP the next year. And I'm not saying he's going to win the MVP with the New York Jets this year, but what I am still saying is he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and I want to see him with some really good weapons around him, like a Garrett Wilson in particular. This was another thing we brought up earlier in the show, but I was fortunate enough to attend Jets training camp on Sunday, and of course the hype was real. It was a great atmosphere, but just seeing some of the throws, like they were still at least 10 or 15 throws that Aaron Rodgers made, especially towards the back end of last year. That Miami game comes to mind when he went into Miami and beat Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDaniel in a must-win game for both teams, and Rodgers still made a handful of throws that made you just say, like, wow, this guy still got it. Now, when it comes to the Jets, there are plenty of questions for them, of course, like Robert Saleh. We don't know how good of a head coach he really is. Rodgers, he's approaching 40 years old. Is he going to be able to be that same guy? I do think that him coming to New York in a better situation than Green Bay, motivated, I think that's going to help him. I still think Aaron Rodgers is a top 5 quarterback in this league. I will have him at number 4 on my list. At number 3, man, this was honestly the one I was really looking forward the most to talking about on this list today. And I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. And honestly, I was considering ranking him even higher because I do think that over the course of the offseason, I got to be honest, I think Jalen Hurts has been disrespected. I think the fact that PFF just dropped their list of the top 50 players in the NFL, not even top 5, top 10 quarterbacks, which ESPN, I'll get to their executives rankings in a bit, but PFF ranked their top 50 players in the NFL. And Jalen Hurts, a.k.a. the guy that easily could have won the MVP last year if he was healthy, a.k.a. the guy that literally was the only reason why the Eagles even had a chance in that Super Bowl against Kansas City. We forget there were a couple of breaks that went Philadelphia's way in that game. Like, Jalen Hurts was the best player for Philadelphia in that game, and if they don't have him, they're not even competitive in that game against Kansas City. But he's one of those guys. If you have Jalen Hurts on your team, you're going to have a chance to win a ton of games, if not most of your games. And I think he was one of the best players in the NFL last year. I'm going to back him up on that and rank him appropriately. We all think Philadelphia, they should be the favorite in the NFC based on how good they were last year, how poorly that rest of the conference is. I do think that Jalen Hurts, as more time goes on, we are going to see him as an established, elite, top 3 quarterback in the league. What a player he is. I think he showed he was that dude last year. I'll have him at number 3. At number 2, I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. And for me, it was a coin toss between Burrow and Hurts at 2 and 3. You got to respect that everything that Burrow has done over the course of the last few years. Of course, really the only guy not named Tom Brady who has proven he's able to go into Arrowhead in the playoffs and go head-to-head with Patrick Mahomes in a big playoff game. He did that last year. And Burrow is like Hurts. He's one of those guys where if you have him on your team, you're definitely going to have a chance to win a ton of football games. And I think it's a big year for Cincinnati because when you look at that trio of Chase and Higgins and Burrow, it's a question for me how long they're going to be able to keep those 3 guys together. I also think it was big for Cincinnati that they brought back both their coordinators. What they did to Buffalo in that playoff game, honestly, was one of the more impressive playoff performances I've seen in recent years. The fact that they were able to not only just go in there and win when Buffalo, that was just such an emotional scene after they're showing DeMar Hamlin on the scoreboard. Cincinnati didn't care. They just went in there, stomped them, boom, boom, didn't even look concerned. And the thing I appreciate most about Joe Burrow, dating back to even his college days, is you will never see him in a situation where he's afraid or that the Bengals look intimidated. Like, any game they're in, any place it's in, if they have Burrow, they're going to have a chance to win. Dude is unreal. I don't even think a lot of people realize just how good he could be when Cincinnati drafted him number 1 overall in that 2020 draft. Him, Justin Herbert, Tua. There were plenty of questions about who ultimately would be the best quarterback in that draft. But for me, there are no doubts. Joe Burrow is that dude. I will have him at number 2. And at number 1, Will, we've been doing this list. I believe it's the 3rd year we've been doing this now. And since we've been doing it, since we started it, one constant that has never changed on my list is that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. And I think he showed us that last year for the first time in his career. Entering the 2022 season, there were some questions like, can this Chiefs offense really keep up their end of the bargain of being the best in the league without Tyreek Hill, when a lot of people and a lot of defensive coordinators thought they finally had found a little bit of a scheme that could limit Mahomes, not blitzing him and holding some extra guys back in the secondary, that cover 2. And like he always does, Mahomes shows us that he was able to get over it. He wins the MVP. He wins the Super Bowl. Kansas City, even without Tyreek Hill, had the number 1 scoring offense in the league, really from start to finish. This guy with 2 Super Bowl rings, 2 MVPs now, I don't think there's anyone better, and I haven't for the past few years since we've been doing this list. I'm going to be very curious to see how Kansas City looks going into the year without Juju. Kadarius Toney's already banged up. It's funny, Kansas City has some questions already going into the season with Toney being banged up. We'll see if they'll be able to work out a contract with Chris Jones. I don't believe he's reported yet, but Mahomes is just one of those guys like Burrow, like Hurts, who I just mentioned. Like, as long as you have him on your team, you're obviously going to have a chance to win games. The fact that he did what he did last year also on one ankle, I still don't think that's spoken about enough either. He clearly wasn't 100% and still was willing to do whatever it took for his team to win the game. So I will have him at number 1. To recap the top 5 of my list, I'll go with Justin Herbert at number 5, Aaron Rodgers at number 4, Jalen Hurts at number 3, Joe Burrow at number 2, and Patrick Mahomes at number 1. Well, I'll throw the mic your way.
Absolutely, Zach. And, I'm going to, ask about Jalen Hurts. I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about him before we close. I'm going to go ahead with my list, and then maybe we could talk about, everything from a, recapping perspective. So to recap my list, right? Honestly, to be honest with you, I don't even feel like recapping all 32. Zach did it. I don't think I'm in the mood to do it.
You want me to, but your call.
I mean, hey, you could go on Instagram, not 1999 anymore podcast, and check it out. It's also going to be in the description upon this video going up as well. So it's right there. It's online. I'm ready to be on time here. At number 5, I'm going to go with Trevor Lawerence. I think it's very, very scary hours in Duval County right now. I mean, last year, he took a significant leap. And I don't think a lot of people realize the leap, right? It wasn't an MVP type leap. But historically, I don't believe there was any quarterback that had improved statistics-wise from year 1 to year 2 than Trevor Lawrence. And stats back that up. Now, just imagine year 2 in Doug Peterson's offense. Just imagine with that number 1 wide receiver that was traded for last year that they couldn't even use last year because he was suspended, in Calvin Ridley. I could just imagine year 3. And that's why I'm high on Trevor Lawrence. You see, my list right now is basically projecting you into the year, right? It's not about accomplishments like that. It's nothing to do about it, to be honest with you. I could care less if you won 20,000 chips. It's about what I feel you are today and where I feel you're going to be tomorrow. And if you're going to be in that MVP discussion. I actually formulated my list based on guys who I feel is going to win the MVP. And that's how my top 10 is pretty formulated. So I think Trevor Lawrence is potentially going to win that award. That's why he's this high, higher than where the consensus will have him, because I do believe he will win it. And I'm going to bank on that. Listen, I think when you have Christian Kirk as your number 2 and not your number 1, I think he's better served that way. Even though in the playoffs, in the wild card against the Chargers, he had a very, very good elite game as the number 1. As a number 2, I'm fascinated to see what he can do. Zay Jones as your number 3, that's the place for him to be. I think when you combine that and Travis Etienne, he's going to be involved in the running and passing game as well with extra weapon, along with the guy I brought up in Calvin Ridley, who I still think is an elite wide receiver. You combine that, you combine the coach, you combine the quarterback who has a strong arm, can make any throw that you wanted to make, the size, the physical attributes. I mean, it all started at that Cowboys game. That Cowboys game really broke Trevor Lawrence out, where he made those lengthy throws down the field. And it's funny because I am getting a premonition here, similar to what the Eagles did last year with Jalen Hurts. If y'all remember, 2 years ago, the Eagles kind of went on a little streak. They went on a 4-game winning streak before they got into the wild card. And a lot of people didn't look at that streak and took nothing of it because they got bombarded out the football field against my Buccaneers. But that 4-game winning streak was a sign, because the year after they dominated, was going undefeated till they lost a game and ultimately lost the Super Bowl. The Jaguars last year actually went 5-2 before making the playoffs, went on a little streak before they made the playoffs and lost to Kansas City. And I think they're going to carry on that streak and be one of the dominating teams in the AFC. They have the benefit of AFC South schedule. They have the benefit of NFC South schedule as well. Trevor Lawerence should be an MVP candidate, and that's why he's number 5. At number 4, I'm going to go with my guy Justin Herbert at number 4. I mean, the guy has shown flashes of greatness, but he has been held back by the Chargers organization. And I understand that the achievements is not there yet, but once again, I made it very clear. This ranking is not about achievements right now, right? I understand, achievements are important when we talk about legacy here, but achievements in the NFL is team-oriented. The NFL is the most team-aligned sport there is in any sport. And chances are you have the achievements. Chances are you have a great team. And the Chargers, yes, they have had weapons, but coaching is one of the more important things to a quarterback's development. And that has been lacking. And the coordinator has been lacking. Joe Lombardi, as I stated before, was late to the party. I mean, he has a quarterback with a cannon of an arm, and you have this rinky-dink, conservative, 3 yards per play, passing offense. What are we doing here? I believe in Kellen Moore, all right? And that's why he's make a break for me. I believe in this guy, that he can install the X's and O's to give Justin Herbert that confidence to be amongst the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrows out here, to be a part of the 4 horsemen that we have of the apocalypse of the NFL. And I do believe he's number 4. I believe he's that 4th horseman. And they have the weapons. They have Quentin Johnson, who they drafted, wide receiver, who can be great with the yak, who can be great down the field. You have Keenan Allen. You have Mike Williams. And yes, I understand those guys are hard to rely on to give you a 17-game stretch of production, because they won't be there for 17 games. But because you got Johnson, let's say hypothetically, Keenan Allen goes down, you got Mike Williams, right? Or vice versa. You have Keenan Allen, and you have Johnson, and you have Palmer, and you have Guyton, who's coming back. So I'm excited that Justin Herbert could show the world that, yes, I may have not shown up in college like that in big games. I may have not shown up in the NFL in big games, but I have the talent and I have the skills to win playoff games. And I think he will win playoff games this time around. And the only thing, before I move on, the only thing that I would like to see Justin Herbert do a little bit more is be more outgoing and show that flair, that charismaticness, that sassiness, that what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word, moxie. I'm looking for that from Justin Herbert a little bit. I think he's a little bit too quiet. I need to see that passionate Justin Herbert, and I think a passionate, wild up Justin Herbert is a very, very scary Justin Herbert. And I'm gonna have him at number 4. At number 3, this is where things are gonna get very interesting. I'm gonna go with Josh Allen at number 3. Listen, he is your typical Build-A-Bear quarterback protege. He can throw the ball 70 yards. He can run you over. That's it. That's why he's number 3. Once again, he can throw the ball 70 yards. He can run you over. That's why he's number 3. Obviously, I can't move on that quickly. I'm going to break it down right now. I mean, listen, out of all these guys over here that I've named thus far, Josh Allen, and in my top 10, by the way, Josh Allen doesn't have the luxury of having that bell cow back to ease the pressure off of him. I do believe in a perfect world that Buffalo running game will get going. Okay, I understand they had the Nyheim Hines injury. Obviously, we're going to talk about Dalvin Cook potentially. Who knows if he signs still, whatever. But if they can get that running game going and get Isaiah Pacheco type production on this team, just get 3-4 yards a pop, then Josh Allen is going to be even more hard to stop, because we know what he can do with the ball in his hands. If he can cut the interception rate in half, he will win an MVP. He can win a Super Bowl. but the running game will help that tremendously. There's no valuable player to his or her team. Well, obviously his, not her. His team than Josh Allen. You subtract him off your roster, you're not winning nothing. You're not. They rely so much on Josh Allen's abilities. And you still have Stephon Diggs there. They drafted Dalton Kincaid. So I do believe, personally, outside of Miami, Buffalo may have, on paper, once again, on paper don't play, but on paper, have the most explosive offense in the NFL. Because I do believe they're going to have the flexibility to run 12 personnels, 2 tight end sets, rush the football, and go 3 wide receiver sets with Khalil Shakur as a slot guy. They're always going to be explosive. Whether that translate in a tough division and wins is another thing. This division is tough. I don't know who's winning it right now. I think I have a good idea in my mind who I might go with, but I don't know. But I do know Josh Allen is going to be productive. I do know Josh Allen will be in an MVP conversation. Whether or not he can get over that hump and win the Super Bowl is another different animal. But he should be a top 3 quarterback this year. I'm going with Josh Allen to be a top 3 quarterback this year. At number 2, this is where things are going to get spicy. It's getting spicy. I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes at number 2 for me. Right? I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes number 2. There's no denying that this guy is an alien, kind of. Right? He needs to be investigated if he came out of Area 51. If he really is a human or not, because sometimes I don't really think he is. There's no denying his greatness. There's no denying his achievements. Listen, the reason why I don't have him number 1, I made my point very clear in the past, is that I haven't really seen him in a tremendous amount of adversity. I look at him as that privileged kid that is a very smart, intelligent kid, but has the luxury of access to the world because of his rich parents, right? When you look at Mahomes, he was thrusted in a great situation with arguably the greatest coach of all time. I go Bill Belichick. Andy Reid is right up there. He's breathing down Bill Belichick's neck for the greatest coach of all time. And we know his X's and O's. It's very hard to stop. I actually thought he was the most impressive party that wasn't on the football field in that Super Bowl. The game that he called, out coaching Gannon, the defensive coordinator for the Eagles. I mean, that's how he was able to do the things he did on one leg. It would not have been without Andy Reid's brilliance and without Mahomes' abilities as a quarterback to withstand those, sequences in the playoffs where he suffered the injury. But look, there's one thing that separates Mahomes and Burrow for me. It's one thing. And maybe I'm going to look at it totally different from everybody else, but this is what I value. I want to see you win on the road in the playoffs. And I understand that maybe I am penalizing the Chiefs for having a stranglehold on their division, winning it 6 years in a row. I get all that, but I'll tell you one thing. My favorite moments being a Tom Brady fan, he is the GOAT, was the fact that he beat all these quarterbacks on the road. Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, all those guys he beat on the road in their backyard. I want to see Mahomes do that. And if he could do that this year, if he can go and beat Josh Allen on the road this year, if that happens, if that matchup is to happen, if he could go and beat Burrow in Burrow's backyard in the playoffs, he'll be number 1. Don't ask me next year. He'll be number 1. That's what I want to see from Mahomes. But like I said, there's no denying that this guy's an alien. There's no denying that he is a great quarterback. I just think when you talk about the injuries of Kadarius Toney, you lose Juju. I'm not sure if he's going to win another MVP this year. Obviously, you have a chance. Win him as your quarterback, but I don't think he will win MVP. I will probably bank that he won't win back-to-back MVPs. And, he'll be right up there, though. So I'm going with Patrick Mahomes at number 2. Yes, we know who number 1 is by now. Yes, it's Joe Burrow. It's Joe, calm, cool, and collective. And each of these 3 quarterbacks have something very great about them that I like. Mahomes is the ability to make plays and throw the ball deep and his just dual threat abilities. With Josh Allen is his protege, his prototype, his size, his abilities as, a quarterback. Same thing with Mahomes. Those 2 guys is like 1A, 1B. But Joe Burrow is very unique. It's poise and collectiveness about him that I like. And he reminds me of my guy Tom Brady a lot in those regards. And I feel like with Joe Burrow, no matter where you're seated, no matter if you're on the road, if you're at home, you're always going to have an opportunity to win. And that's what I like about Joe Burrow. They went on the road a couple years ago and they made the Super Bowl. Right? Last year, they went on the road, fell a little bit short. But when you look at the resumes and the matchup with Joe Burrow and Mahomes, right? I believe that Burrow is 3-1 against Mahomes. We all know that should have been 4-0. I thought they got robbed last year, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Like, I just don't forget about history when I lived it yesterday that easily. They should have won that. It should have been 4-0. I have yet to see Mahomes go in Burrow's backyard and beat him. I thought Burrow could have won MVP last year. I gave it to Mahomes last year. I thought Mahomes was the MVP last year, fairly. But if the DeMar Hamlin situation didn't happen, then you're talking about Joe Burrow beating Josh Allen and Mahomes in the same calendar year. I mean, it's very hard not to give him the MVP that year. Obviously, circumstances happen. Now, I saw Burrow beat Mahomes in his backyard. I saw Burrow beat Josh Allen in his backyard in the playoffs, right? In the bad weather, no matter where the situation is. And that's what I'm talking about, is that no matter the offensive line getting sacked 9 times a game, he still has the poise to stand in that pocket and be the tactician he is in that pocket. He can make every single throw. He can push the ball down the field. He has very underrated mobility. I understand he doesn't have the dual threat abilities that Mahomes and Allen has, but he has just enough mobility and pocket awareness to get out of situations in trouble and make plays down the field. Listen, I think he reminds me of Tom Brady. It's like this. When you talk about, the NBA, right? You got Kobe, Michael, and LeBron. Kobe is like Michael, right? He's like a Michael clone. LeBron is LeBron James. Mahomes, to me, is LeBron James. Joe Burrow is like Tom Brady, which is like Jordan. So I think you can't go wrong with all 3 of these guys. I could have easily went either way, but I'm going to go with Joe Burrow to save the day. I'm going with him number 1. That's a guy that I want in the fourth quarter. Nobody has made more clutch drives than Joe Burrow. He doesn't have the accomplishments yet. He didn't win an MVP. He didn't win a Super Bowl, but I do believe that he can win an MVP this year, and that's why he's that high. So to recap my list, at number 5, I'm going Trevor Lawerence. At number 4, I'm going Justin Herbert. At number 3, I'm going Josh Allen. At number 2, I'm going Pat Mahomes. And number 1, I'm going Joe Burrow. That's my final 5.
All right, let's get into it. So we'll start right off the bat, like with the Mahomes-Burrow debate at number 1 and 2. So everything you said was true, right? Like about Mahomes, the fact that he's never even played in a road playoff game. That's my thing, right? Like if we had concrete evidence that showed us, like, okay, Mahomes struggles on the road in playoff games, I would have no problem with you penalizing him for that. But we just don't have the evidence. Like we cannot confidently say that he struggles in road playoff games because the Chiefs have never played in one with him as their quarterback. And if they would have missed the playoffs like once or twice in that span, I get penalizing him. But I think you have to reward him for that. The fact that we don't even know the answer, like that is just super impressive to me, how big of a stranglehold Kansas City has had. And when you said he hasn't been through adversity, like he lost Tyreek Hill. Like
I didn't say he didn't been through adversity. I don't think he's been through the adversities that these other quarterbacks have been through.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that losing arguably the best receiver in the league, and last year at this time when the narrative was, oh, there's finally a defense that could slow him down. Cincinnati, they finally provided the blueprint. When he responds to those two things by winning an MVP and a Super Bowl and having the number 1 scoring offense in the league throughout the season, like what else? What else do you want this guy to do?
I mean, I have a number 2, Zach. So basically,
but I think he's
the best player
in the league by far. Like,
I mean, you clearly think he's the best player. I don't clearly think that way. Clearly, I think it's much closer than what people are giving it credit for. And that has always been how I felt. I really feel like a lot of people think it's Mahomes and everybody else is Pleasance. I don't see it that way, because if it was that way, then he would have a better record head-to-head than Joe Burrow. At the end of the day, team success is team success. But individually, when these two teams played each other, both Mahomes and Joe Burrow has showed up, and Burrow has gotten the better of Mahomes most of the times they played. And he went in Mahomes' backyard in the playoffs and beat him there. I can't penalize him for that. Right? Did Mahomes go over there and beat him there? No, he didn't. So if I'm not penalizing Mahomes, I'm penalizing Joe Burrow. Either way, I have to live with something, and I'm living with Joe Burrow because I do believe that Joe Burrow, maybe it is 1A to me, but I do believe that he has the best shot to win an MVP. He should win MVP. And I don't believe that Mahomes will have the same successful season he had last year. Even though last year he lost Tyreek Hill, I get it, but you lost Juju and Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney is injury prone. We know that. So if you're banking on him being your number one wide receiver, then I'm not sure if you're banking on that guy. It is a good idea. So I understand you got Mahomes. He's going to bail you out of certain situations, but you're going to need a decent team around him with some guys that can be consistent as far as wide receivers for him to win another MVP award. So I don't think it's a gap.
A couple of things I'll say in response to that. So I know like technically Toney right now would be their number one receiver, but they have Kelsey. My only concern for Kansas City this year would be if just out of nowhere, like Kelsey declines and isn't the player that we're so used to him being. But that's the thing about Mahomes that's so impressive. Like I've said this throughout the list too, is like, for me, you proving yourself as an elite quarterback is showing the ability to make guys around you significantly better when prior to that, like sometimes we haven't even heard of them. Like that's the Tom Brady special, him doing it with Amendola and Chris Hogan, and what Mahomes was able to do last year with guys like Toney, with a guy like Valdez-Scantling.
But I think it also goes beyond that, Zach, because, you know, in order to have great quarterback play, you need weapons and you need coaching and you need an offensive line. You need those three things. You cannot succeed in the NFL without those three things. You could probably lose one of those things and maybe you kind of could maneuver, but generally you need all three of those things and at least one of those three things. And he has had great coaching. That's what matters. If you have, like, for example, when you have Tom Brady and Belichick in your prime, that's why they was able to win with tomato cans, because they had great quarterback, great coach, right? So they're always going to win. And that's what they had. They have great coach and great quarterback. That's why they win games. So it makes up for the weapons. They have a great offensive line on top of that. So when the guy's on one leg and he's not getting hit, you can't take advantage of that because he's not getting hit, because he's mobile, he's elusive, and he improvises, and his line is top notch. Joe Burrow had playoff games where he got sacked 9 times. What on earth example do we have other than that where quarterbacks get sacked that many times with a offensive line that is not really elite and still have a chance to win? You have to be cut from a different cloth. So I think when you talk about these two-headed dragons here, or three-headed dragons, that literally you can make the same arguments about either guy. It's just that one guy has rings and the other doesn't. And I think those are team awards. Those are team, how can I say, collaborated efforts. That's the only difference here. When Tom Brady won championships, there were still people saying Aaron Rodgers was better, because we fall in love with the physical attributes and the throwing behind the back and scrambling out the pocket, and we fall in love with that.
I mean, yeah, I feel the same. And what you're saying about Burrow is true, but I feel the same way about Mahomes. Like, this guy was on one leg, and he was still able to beat Burrow and Hurts in back-to-back playoff games. And my thing is, one more thing I'll say. I understand that, how we do our lists are different. Like, our criteria is going to be different. And I understand, too, that, look, I had Justin Herbert number 5. And when you look at his resume in terms of the individual accomplishments, it's not really that high. So I agree. Rings and accomplishments are not everything. But at the end of the day, winning is everything to me. And the fact that Mahomes has been able to not only win 2 Super Bowls, but get his team to a third. He's been in 6 straight AFC Championship games. He showed he could do it without Hill. I just don't understand, what else this guy could do. Okay, play in and win a road playoff game. But if the Chiefs are even in a road playoff game, that means they got worse during the regular season, which is something you penalize for them anyway. It's kind of like a lose-lose. I just want to know, what do you need to see from this guy in order for him to?
I think I pretty much, it's self-explanatory, is win road playoff games, because those are hard to win.
Do that when he's so good that he doesn't even give his team his chance to play in one.
They haven't had a stranglehold on their division. You subtract Cincinnati and put them in that conference, in that division, and you take the Chiefs and put them in a stacked AFC North, I'm pretty sure they will not be having division titles every single year. So a lot of it is, your surroundings, your division, those things matter, right? So at the end of the day, I just don't think that the gap is big enough where we should be tripping off of number 2 and number 1. I ain't tripping off of you having Joe Burrow number 2 because it's a fair argument, right? I think it's that close. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my God, you had Joe Burrow number 2. Like, nah. And number 2, I saw him go in worse situations and win. I saw him win in tougher environments. I saw him beat Mahomes. Hello. He beat Mahomes head to head. I mean, what are we tripping over here? Look at the head-to-head battle. Because at the end of the day, a team is going to win. A team is a team, whatever. Success is team-oriented. But when these two guys played, equally, they gave their teams a chance to win. Burrow got the edge. So, I mean, there should have been 4-0. If it was 4-0, if the Bengals won last year, which they should have, they got robbed, and it was 4-0, are we having this debate right now?
No, because Mahomes only has 1 Super Bowl ring, but clearly he has 2. And one thing I want to say about, the Bengals should have won that game. You can make
and who prevented him from having 3? Joe Burrow. So at the end of the day, you can go either way.
In that AFC Championship game, Mahomes outplayed Burrow. Burrow threw 2 interceptions. Mahomes had 0.
Yeah, and the Chiefs got stuffed the second half with like 3 straight possessions where they did not score. The only time they scored after that stint was because of the daggone bogus late hit, whatever situation when it was holding on that same exact play. So
what I'll say is I give Burrow credit. Like, yes, I firmly have him at number 2, and he's beaten Mahomes in the regular season, which is great. But we value the playoff games, and each guy has 1 win. That 1 AFC title win by Burrow was really impressive. But like you brought up some points, like if Mahomes didn't have Andy Reid, if he was drafted in a worse situation, if he was put in the AFC North. I'll throw this at you, like Joe Burrow, as great as he is, and I have him number 2. I'm really nitpicking here. But if we're looking deep, like what if the refs didn't blow the whistle early in that playoff game against the Raiders and the Raiders score a touchdown possibly and win that game? What if Ryan Tannehill doesn't completely crap all over his pants and throw 3 interceptions and the Titans are able to beat the Bengals in that playoff game like they were supposed to? Like, yeah, you got to give Burrow credit for being able to get his team out of those bad situations. That's why he's number 2. Oh, what if Tyler Huntley doesn't fumble the football at the 1-yard line? Like, if you're going to play the what-if game with Mahomes, there are a lot of what-ifs to play with Burrow as well. And in that AFC Championship game, Mahomes outplayed him. On 1 leg, he had 0 picks. Burrow had 2, which you could make the argument cost his team the game.
I mean, 2 picks, 0 interceptions, whatever. I mean, Burrow, I believe, threw for more yards. So at the end of the day, yeah, he had 2 interceptions. That wasn't Mahomes intercepting the ball. It was the defense intercepting the ball. So at the end of the day, everything is team-based. Like I said before, you look head-to-head, Burrow clearly has gotten the better of Mahomes. Even though the eye test shows that those matchups are close, they're each giving their team a chance to win. If you have these 2 quarterbacks on your roster, you feel good about your chances. Joe Burrow already said that my window is in my career. I believe him. I'll take him for his word. I can say the same thing about Mahomes. I'm not arguing. I'm not debating over a spot. I'm just not. I think it's close. Mahomes is more accomplished, but clearly accomplishments is not everything because clearly we have Justin Herbert 4-5, and he hasn't won a big game in college either. So it's going off of pure ability, and on my list, which is probably different than yours, is who I feel is going to win MVP this year. I'm projecting you into the year. And I don't project the Chiefs to be a bad team this year. I don't project them to be, dominant like how they were last year. I project them to be right in the middle of things. So that's where I'll leave it.
All right. Will be definitely an interesting one to track throughout the season. But one last point I wanted to make on my top 5, a guy you didn't have in your top 5, I've been very vocal about this since I saw that PFF article, is Jalen Hurts. And for me, man, like, I just want to ask you, I'm not saying you're disrespecting him because I've seen worse takes out there than having him at number 6. But do you really think that the 5 quarterbacks you named in your top 5 that you just named, do you really deep down think that all 5 of them are better than the quarterback we saw go head-to-head with Patrick Mahomes and play the game of his life in the Super Bowl? Because I think, Will, that last year it was clear to me that Jalen Hurts was one of the 3 best players in the NFL, and you can make the argument that he was the best player in the NFL. I think that's how good he was. I don't know if it's just the fact that he has to shed the narrative of being a second-round pick that struggled in some big games sometimes in college, and people still don't believe in him. Like, I don't get it. But what I've watched is that Jalen Hurts last year was an elite top 3 quarterback, and I would put him over Josh Allen. He doesn't turn the ball over. Josh Allen does. He's cost his team games turning the ball over. I like Justin Herbert a lot, but when you look at what Jalen Hurts did last year, Justin Herbert has never done anything close to that. I was really considering putting Hurts at 2 over Joe Burrow, and the fact that PFF didn't even consider him a top 50 player in the league, they think Mark Andrews is a better player than Jalen Hurts, that's really disrespectful for me. I thought after what he was able to do last year, that narrative was over, that we didn't believe in Jalen Hurts anymore, and now there are people saying that he's not a top 5 quarterback. I think it's disrespectful. I really do.
It's not disrespectful at all. Upon doing my list, when I ranked Jalen Hurts, that was another hard guy for me to rank because realistically, I don't have an issue ranking him number 2 through number 7. If you ranked him anywhere from number 2, in between number 2 and 7, I don't have an issue with the ranking because I can see a legitimate argument why, and I can make a legitimate argument why I could have him 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's because of the quarterback proteges and prototypes that we have across the league. And we have so much talent at the quarterback spot. I know that's very generic, but it's true. It's reality. We have quarterbacks that had a bad season last year, like Deshaun Watson, and everybody's ranking him below the top 10. Why? Because there's so much talent. We forgot about him, right? That's how the league is. So I know people personally, and I can't speak for myself. I can't speak for myself. I don't know if I would go that way, but there's a lot of people that still believe Lamar Jackson is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. And when you look at Lamar Jackson, yeah, I mean, he won MVP. And I understand he won MVP. Jalen Hurts didn't win anything. And I'm not saying that I would take Jalen Hurts over Lamar Jackson for the record. But to those naysayers, Lamar Jackson won an MVP. You know, Hurts didn't win a Super Bowl or an MVP. It was close, but he didn't win it. So there's some people that believe that Lamar Jackson is better. When you look at, for example, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, and Jalen Hurts, I don't see the difference. As far as individually, I'm not talking team accolades. I'm looking at skill sets. All right. And Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, Hurts, I don't see the difference. Matter of fact, I see history repeating itself, especially when you compare Fields and Hurts. Hurts' first 2 years was horrible in the NFL.
Horrible. He got his team to the playoffs in the second year.
Individually, but when you look at that 2 years ago, it was clearly the team taking him there. That's how I viewed it, right? Because he was struggling with his accuracy. He was one of the worst accurate throws of the football 2 years ago. We just not going to forget that. He was. There's a reason why I ranked him where I ranked him last year because of what I saw last year. I mean, I'm talking about 2 years ago, rather, right? So clearly I felt, and most people felt, that the team carried him to the playoffs. Last year, he carried the team to the playoffs, but it was a very stacked team and a very, very great team, right? The difference is with Hurts compared to Mahomes, compared to Josh Allen, compared to Joe Burrow, is that the difference is a major difference in the way how we view them for one reason only. We saw Mahomes come into the NFL and dominate right away. We saw Joe Burrow come to the NFL, dominate right away. We saw Josh Allen, different. And the reason why Josh Allen and Hurts is the same, and why we debating Hurts and Allen, because clearly we differ on those two guys, is for one reason only. We saw their flaws in the NFL the first couple years. So we saw their flaws and we saw their ups. So we are trying to debate in our minds that, all right, can we see more ups, right? And that's the difference. There's some people that don't even believe in Josh Allen to this day. Like Zach is one of those guys, right? So Hurts and Allen is the same in the sense that we saw their flaws. We saw the lack of accuracy that both of these quarterbacks struggled with when they first got to the league. And then we saw the addition of the Stephon Diggs, the addition of the A.J. Brown, and it took them to another level, and they did good things. Now, it's all about sustaining that, success. So, for me, the reason why I had him number 6 is because I want to see that more. I want to see that again. Show me that again. I saw Cam Newton make a Super Bowl, and win an MVP, and almost win a daggone Super Bowl, right? Just happened to go up against the best defensive team in football that year, and what happened after that? So I want to see it again. So I don't have an issue with anybody ranking him from number 2 to number 7. You rank him number 2? By all means. Last year, he was the second best quarterback in football last year. All right, fine. If that's how you rank in your list, who was the best players last year, he should be ranked number 2. You can rank him number 3 where you had him. No issue with that at all. You can rank him number 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'll have no issue. Right? If you have Lamar Jackson ranked ahead of him, why? Oh, because I think Lamar Jackson is a better football player. He's more explosive as a runner, and he won an MVP. Fair. I don't have no issue with it. Jalen Hurts was really hard for me to rank. I'm not going to lie. He was very tough for me to rank because I thought about ranking him in my top 5. He just fell right below that. So mainly because I want to see that again.
Just answer this question, though. Like, you remember the Super Bowl and what he did, putting the Eagles on his back and...
I remember the Super Bowl.
You have him at number 6. You think
he played like the best player on the field in that Super Bowl. But I also remember the freaking NFC Championship game. He did not perform well in that game. It wasn't a great performance. And if it wasn't for, I hate to play that hypothetical game, but clearly...
You think if Purdy's healthy, the Niners win that game?
Yeah.
Really? It was 14.
I am confident because he didn't play well. So if that offense of the 49ers could have got going and they wasn't juggling quarterbacks, if they could have got going just a little bit, the game would have been tight. And that's he said, she said. But Jalen Hurts did not individually, he did not perform well in the NFC Championship game. How I know? Because he almost got the smoke from Fred. And he's an Eagles fan. So clearly he felt that his performance wasn't up to par in that NFC Championship game. But the defense came through, the quarterbacks went down, and he was built out of that. Now he went to the Super Bowl, performed his best. I give him that. But like I said, I want to see the consistency. I want to see him do it again next year. That's basically what it comes down to. It's like me hearing you. It's like this, Zach. I know this is probably the most cheesiest analogy that I ever came up with on the show. We got a lot of those. Hey, I'm not good at analogies. It's like me hearing your record, right? You send me a rap that you made. And I'm like, yo, Zach got bars, man. Ooh, Zach came with that fire. But it's like, you know what? Hold up. Let me go in the studio with you and let me see you write them bars down and come up with something different so I can know if it's real. It's like going to a restaurant and the food was banging. And I'm like, I'm going to go back tomorrow and see if this wasn't a one-hit wonder as far as the food being good. Last year was amazing by all accounts. So you could have won MVP had you didn't get hurt. And you could have won a Super Bowl. But let me see you do it again. And if you do it again, you think I'm going to have him at 6? No, I'm not.
I mean, you said your list are projections. Like, aren't you projecting him to be a top 5 quarterback this year? Like, I guess not. Like,
6 and 5 is really not really that big of a difference. I think Trevor Lawerence, the reason why I had Trevor Lawerence over him is because I think he's winning the MVP. That's why. I think he's winning the MVP. Easier schedule, right? I understand NFC is light in its own right, but the NFC East is going to bring its challenges, right? Maybe not from a broader scale, but in-house. It's going to bring its challenges. But the Jaguars, taking advantage of that schedule they got, man, and I do believe from a skill set perspective, let's ignore the teams around these two quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Hurts. I'm taking Trevor Lawrence. With all due respect, I am. If you told me I could build a team with one of those two quarterbacks and my team is stacked, ready to go, defense elite, running backs, wide receivers, I just got to choose a quarterback. I'm taking Trevor Lawrence. We saw what he did in the second year. It wasn't spectacular, but it was monumental improvement. This year, he's going to be up there. And that's my list right there. But to say that I'm wrong for having Allen, Herbert, Mahomes, Burrow, and Trevor over him, I don't know. I think Trevor Lawrence got disrespected, by the way, in that NFL top 100 list. So both those quarterbacks are being disrespected. I just think that, Lawrence is being a little bit more disrespected than Hurts.
Yeah, I'll just, my last thought on this, I'll say it again. I don't know how you could watch the NFL last year and Hurts in the Super Bowl and not say he's a top 5 quarterback. Like, I understand it was 1 year, but as in the second year, he got his team to the playoffs. Like, what else do we need to see? I think it's disrespectful for PFF to say he's not a top 50 player in the sport. That is ludicrous. That is, he's not.
I'm not sure how many quarterbacks they had ranked on that list because they're ranking everybody, like players in all positions. So I'm not sure. I would have to see the amount of quarterbacks they had ranked. But like I said, from a quarterback perspective, 2 through 7, I'm fine with. I have no issues with it. As a regular football fan, watching the game, 2 to 7, I have no issue with. As long as you bring your points up, I have no issue with it. I can help you with your points. I can literally tell you why I could rank him 6, 7, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my last point, I think when it came to me making this list, right, the easiest part of this list to make for me just about was my top 3, was Mahomes, Burrow, and Hurts. And, I'm the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan you'll know, but I think after Jalen Hurts at number 3, there was a huge gap. I was never considering putting anyone before those guys in the top 3. I think last year and for this year to come also, they're going to be the 3 best quarterbacks in the league by a pretty significant margin. So that was probably the easiest part of my list.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.